The words weren't spoken. They were fired, a white-hot blade of contempt that landed point first on the polished mahogany. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." I froze. The serving spoon, still suspended, cast a small, silver shadow on the perfectly smooth surface of the vanilla pudding. The scent, rich and comforting, a memory of 1,000 peaceful nights, now seemed an obscene joke. Around me, the room I had poured my very soul into, scrubbing, polishing, attempting to infuse with a warmth my life had often lacked, was suddenly a stark, cold stage. The crystal glasses glimmered under the light, not with welcome, but like frozen tears. The silverware, buffed to a wartime shine, lay ready for a battle I hadn't known I was fighting. I had hoped for peace that night, a single, unbroken hour of the family I had given everything for. Instead, a silence, thick and suffocating, pressed down on every corner of the dining room. Kendra sat across from me, her red dress a predatory, living thing, glowing like a warning. Her eyes, hard and glittering, held a sickening satisfaction, as if she had waited her entire life for the perfect, most annihilating moment to strike. My son, Daniel, my boy, whom I had sheltered from every storm, avoided my gaze, his fingers performing a frantic, nervous tattoo against his phone. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to fly. I pushed back my chair. The scrape of the wood on the floor was the only sound I didn't try to control. I rose slowly, steadying the tremble in my soul until it reached my voice. It came out not as a whisper, but as a pronouncement. "Then your mother can start paying your rent." Daniel's head snapped up. The color drained from his face, leaving a terrifying white mask. "Rent," he shouted, the single word shattering the heavy silence like a crystal glass flung against the wall. That single, desperate question, that moment of ultimate confusion and betrayal, would change everything. "My name is Hazel Carter. I am 70 years old, a widow, a retired seamstress from a town in Ohio that had long forgotten my name. I was a mother who had spent her life shrinking herself to fit the needs of others. My hands, marked by the proof of my devotion, calluses from years of sewing, of hemming, of patching for neighbors who paid in pennies or only in polite thanks, were a testament to a life of unseen labor. This house, this altar of my history, held 3 decades of my love and sacrifice. But for years, I had confused helping my family with loving them. What I didn't realize was that sometimes that ceaseless, quiet help can erase you, piece by painful piece, until you are nothing more than a ghost in your own home. 6 months before this catastrophic dinner, Daniel had arrived on my doorstep, a broken boy. "Mom," he'd choked out, eyes bloodshot, voice cracked. "I lost my job. We can't pay the rent. Please, it'll only be for a few months." A mother's heart is an instinctual fool. It doesn't pause to weigh the cost. I opened my savings account, the meager pile of cash I had gathered, penny by penny, stitch by stitch, for my own fading future. And I began paying their debt. $900 a month for the rent, plus an extra $100 for the landlord's fee. $1,000 drained from my account on the 5th of every month. "Don't tell Kendra," Daniel had pleaded, his voice thick with shame. "She'll feel ashamed depending on you." I believed him. I thought I was guarding her pride when, in reality, I was only shielding his secret. To keep that drain steady, to be their quiet, invisible bank, I became a phantom in my own life. Dinners were reduced to rice and eggs, cheap, filling, and utterly tasteless. I stretched my arthritis medicine thin, enduring the knife-like pain in my joints all night. My shoes split, but I stitched them back up. I told myself it was worth it. My son needed me. Yet, as I ate my tasteless meals, Daniel and Kendra were out. Dinners, new clothes, and weekend trips, all chronicled on social media feeds I watched with a sickening realization. I carried their burden, believing that one day they would simply see my sacrifice and offer a flicker of gratitude. That evening, I craved perfection. I cooked Daniel's favorite meal, a nostalgic offering of chicken and mushroom sauce, rice, and, Finally, the vanilla pudding, the meal of his childhood. I set the table with my mother's precious crystal and the silver cutlery reserved only for sacred, special moments. Kendra arrived, a slash of expensive red that seemed to mock the faded comfort of my home. Her smile was the familiar, chilling prelude to criticism. "The food's a little cold," she'd observed. "Don't you think it's time to update this place? My mom's house feels so modern." I held my smile, soft, gentle, trying to keep the fractured peace. The storm, however, was inevitable. I carried the pudding to the table. I pictured Daniel, a boy, scraping the bowl clean, telling me I was the best cook in the world. But Kendra, a gorgon in a designer dress, leaned back, her fork resting idly, and spoke the words that sliced the room in two. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The spoon froze in my hand. The clock, a furious metronome, punctuated the silence. Daniel looked down, his shoulders hunched with cowardice. I set the spoon down, deliberately, carefully. I pushed back my chair and rose, no longer just a mother, but a woman standing in judgment. My voice was calm, but the weight of 70 years of ignored devotion was in it. "Then your mother can start paying your rent at 46, Briar Lane, Unit 3. Daniel's head snapped up. His water glass tipped, sending a panicked, frantic wave across the table. "What rent?" he stammered, his face white and hollow. "The rent I've been covering since February," I said, my voice cutting through his panic. $900 each month, plus the $100 fee for the landlord's deposit. $1,000 paid faithfully so the two of you could live comfortably. Kendra's smug, painted smile collapsed. Her mask of brittle confidence shattered, revealing a raw, ugly confusion. Daniel was speechless, his jaw slack, the boy in him finally realizing the unforgivable depth of his lie. For the first time in months, the truth was mine to wield, and I was no longer afraid to strike with it. The silence that followed my confession was so heavy it felt suffocating. Daniel blinked, an involuntary, rapid flutter, as if he could unsee the truth simply by refusing to look at it. Finally, a broken sound tore from him. "Mom, I was going to tell you. I was fired 2 weeks ago." The confession was a hammer blow to my heart. Fired. And yet, he had sat here, silent, allowing the woman he chose to share his life with to walk into my house, in her expensive dress, and treat me like I was a thing beneath her, while I was the only thing keeping a roof over their heads. The realization was a seismic shift. This wasn't just about money. It was about disrespect, deceit, and profound ingratitude. The invisible woman had spoken, and the world, or at least my little corner of it, was about to feel the shockwave. Kendra turned to Daniel, her eyes blazing with a sudden, devastating fury that outshone the red of her dress. "You lost your job and didn't tell me?" Her voice rose, a sharp, disbelieving shriek. "I spent $400 on shoes last week. I booked the spa for my birthday. And you let me do it while we're broke?" Daniel ran his hands through his hair, the frantic, boyish gesture of a man utterly overwhelmed. "I thought I could fix it before you noticed," he mumbled, his voice a strained whisper of failure. "I didn't want to disappoint you." I watched them both, the picture of brittle arrogance crumbling into fear, meeting the stark reality of financial ruin. My chest tightened, not with pity, but with a surge of anger so old it felt newly forged. Shoes and spa treatments. The sheer, breathtaking entitlement was too much. "Shoes and spa treatments," I said slowly, the words dropping like stones into a shallow well. "While I sold your father's wedding ring to cover your rent." The room fell silent again, but this time, the air was not thick with confusion. It was choked with shame. I stood tall. An unfamiliar steadiness, a core of granite I hadn't known I possessed, rose within me. For years I had bent, softened, and compromised my very essence. But in this singular, life-defining moment, I was done shrinking. "Daniel." "Kendra," I said, my voice steady, firm, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Your lease is up in 30 days. After that, I will no longer pay a single cent for your apartment." Daniel's mouth fell open, a silent gasp of terror. Mom, you can't do that. We'll have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you lied to me, I replied. My voice wasn't cruel. It was simply clear, a clean cut of truth. Kendra slammed her hand against the table, the noise a desperate act of theater. Mothers don't abandon their children. My mother would never do this to me. I looked her straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering. I am not abandoning my son. I am refusing to be used. There is a difference. Daniel's eyes welled with tears, a final, desperate plea. Please, Mom. Just one more chance. I'll get a job. I'll make it right. I shook my head gently, a movement of irreversible finality. Promises don't pay rent, Daniel. Actions do. If you want to prove yourself, start now. But I will no longer be the safety net that lets you avoid responsibility. For the first time in decades, I felt the tremendous weight of their expectations, the leaden cloak I had worn for so long, slide off my shoulders. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. This was me, Hazel Carter, choosing to respect myself over their comfort. When the door finally closed behind them, the house was quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No sharp words, no nervous tapping, only the steady, gentle hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock, the sound of time reclaimed. I stood at the sink, rinsing the dishes beneath warm water. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the sheer release of everything I had carried alone. That night, I sat in my old rocking chair, and for the first time in months, dread did not press on my chest. When sleep came, it was deep and undisturbed. I dreamed of freedom, peace, and the strange, exhilarating calm of knowing a line had been drawn. By morning, the sunlight spilled across the dining table. It was the same room, but it felt different, lighter, as if the house itself had taken a deep, much-needed breath. 2 days later, just after sunset, the phone rang. Hazel, it's Tom Carson. The name was a time machine, pulling me back 50 years to my college sweetheart, the boy with the crooked smile who promised me the Pacific Ocean. His voice was older, deeper, but it held the same unforgettable warmth. He had built an engineering company, lost his wife, and, while going through old photos, found one of me. I wondered if you were still in Ohio, he said softly. I wanted to hear your voice again. We spoke for hours, sharing the wreckage and the small miracles of our separate lives. Then the invitation, suspended in the night air. Hazel, I'd like to invite you to spend a month in Seattle. No expectations, just old friends catching up. You deserve an extraordinary life, and I'd be honored to show you a bit of mine. I sat holding the phone, my heart pounding with a rhythm I hadn't felt in decades. A month in Seattle, the Pacific Ocean, the adventure I'd traded for duty. I am 70 years old, I reminded myself. Was this foolish? Was it a risk? I wrote a list in my notebook, weighing the fear against the possibility. Then, I asked myself the hardest question. Was I thinking about going to punish Daniel and Kendra, or was I thinking about going because of me? The truth settled quietly in my chest. For the first time in decades, the decision wasn't about anyone else's comfort. It was about mine. I closed the notebook. I'm not running away. I'm choosing myself, I whispered into the dark. The thought was terrifying, but profoundly exhilarating. After years of sacrificing, I had just given myself permission to consider my own happiness. A week later, Daniel showed up at my door. His clothes were wrinkled, his face gaunt, the raw look of a man stripped bare of his defenses. Mom, he said quietly, can we talk? We sat at the kitchen table. He wrapped his hands around a coffee cup, desperately seeking an anchor. I've been sleeping in my car, he admitted. 3 nights now. I finally found night work with a cleaning company, and I signed up for online classes, basic accounting certification. I want to do better. I studied his face. For once, he looked humble, not defensive. I also started therapy, he added. The counselor told me something that shook me. He said I've been addicted to being rescued my whole life. Every time someone bailed me out, it felt like relief, like a drug, and I never learned to stand on my own. He lifted his eyes, meeting mine with a painful sincerity. I'm not here to ask for money. I'm here to tell you I'm trying. And I'll keep trying, even if it takes years for you to believe me. For the first time in a long while, hope flickered, fragile, but unmistakably real. The following week, I stood in my bedroom, packing dresses for a journey I never imagined. Daniel drove me to the airport. The car ride was quiet, a silence born not of resentment, but of acceptance. At the terminal, he pulled a small bouquet of daisies from the back seat, my favorite flower since I was a girl. Mom, he said, handing me an envelope. Don't open this until you're on the plane. It's easier for me to write than to speak. We hugged, a long, genuine embrace, the first in years. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, son. I replied, my voice strong. Now it's time for both of us to stand on our own 2 feet. On the plane, as the clouds spread out like an endless field below, I opened his letter. In shaky handwriting, Daniel had written, Fly high, Mom. You've earned it. For the first time in decades, I felt the sky was mine. Seattle greeted me with air that smelled of salt and pine. At the arrival's gate, Tom stood waiting, his hair white, his face lined, but his smile the same one that had once made my young heart race. Hazel, he said, embracing me, you're even more beautiful than I remembered. The days that followed were pure, uninterrupted joy. I stood barefoot in the sand of the Pacific coast, watching the waves crash, and whispered to myself, I made it. I was Hazel, a woman with stories, laughter, and a heart still open to love. One evening, after a month of shared dinners and quiet mornings, Tom reached for my hand. The sky was streaked with magnificent orange and purple. Hazel, he said, his eyes kind. Move to Seattle. Let's see what we can build at this stage of our lives. My first instinct was fear, my old house, my safe, familiar world. But then I thought of Daniel's letter. Fly high, Mom. I thought of all the years I'd spent shrinking myself. And I knew that saying yes wasn't reckless. It was brave. A month later, Daniel helped me pack the final boxes in my old house. Funny, he said with a genuine smile. By letting you go, I finally feel like I've really got you back. Not the mother who rescued me, but the woman I never knew well enough. At 70 years old, I was not closing a chapter. I was opening one. And this time, the story was mine to write. From Tom's porch, overlooking the vast Pacific, I understand now. It is never too late to choose yourself. Unconditional love is powerful, but without boundaries, it becomes a trap. Being a mother doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means raising children to stand, even if it means watching them stumble first. To anyone listening, you are not too old, too late, or too small to start again. I was 70 when I boarded that plane. 70 when I opened my heart to joy. 70 when I learned that happiness is not a gift others give us. It's a choice we must finally give ourselves. And if I could do it, so can you.